Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating, profound, and honestly, pretty dark topic. We're looking at the 19th century French poet Charles Baudelaire, and specifically his intoxicating antidotes to the human condition. This was a brilliant guy who desperately wanted to escape reality, and we're going to discover exactly how he tried to pull that off.
So let's jump right into this with a universal, kind of provocative question. How do you escape the crush of time? We all feel it, right? That ticking clock, the heavy weight of past mistakes, the sheer anxiety of the future. Coping with that is just a fundamental part of the human experience.
While Charles Baudelaire prescribed a famous, highly hedonistic remedy for this exact existential crisis. He famously declared that to escape the burden of time, you simply have to be continually drunk. And he didn't just mean alcohol here. He meant intoxication in literally all its forms. He spent his entire life testing this theory, constantly searching for the ultimate escape hatch.
Here is our agenda for today. We'll start with the universal problem, the burden of time. Then we'll explore three of his chemical remedies: wine, hashish, and opium. And finally, we'll wrap things up by looking at the artist's dilemma.
Section 1. The burden of time.
Baudelaire didn't see time as just a ticking clock on the wall. He felt it as a physical weight, a literal tyrant. Imagine time as an accountant who is constantly tallying up your debts, your physical decay, and your failures. It's this suffocating feeling of a vice tightening around you, physically bending you to the earth. To him, time was a harsh accusation that you had to face fresh every single morning.
Section 2. Wine, the earthly pulse. Now, wine offers a very specific promise. It softens the sharp edges of consciousness by simply dampening the nervous system. It takes the anxieties of your past and the fear of your future, and it blurs them into this thick, soft, bearable present moment. It's not transporting you to some other dimension. It just makes the real world feel a little looser and a little warmer. But the experience actually shifts entirely depending on the vintage. Red wine is earthy, it's heavy, it slows time down and forces you to really embrace your physical incarnation, pulling you deep into your body. White wine, on the flip side, is cerebral and bright. It sharpens your wit and accelerates time rapidly, making an entire evening just vanish in a flash of conversation.
The crucial point here is that Baudelaire used wines specifically to treat his spleen. That was his term for a paralyzing melancholy and an absolute disgust with physical existence. But wine is a trap. It requires constant re-administration, and it always brings a punishing hangover. And a hangover is exactly when time takes its harsh revenge, forcing you to look at yourself unfiltered in that brutal morning light.
Section 3. Hashish, the temporal distortion. Over in 19th century Paris, Baudelaire actually joined a group called the Club des Hashichans to explore what he famously called an artificial paradise. We're talking about a chemically manufactured state that completely replaces ordinary consciousness with a transcendent illusion. You aren't just taking the edge off your reality anymore, you are temporarily transported to a parallel one. Baudelaire mapped out this hashish journey with incredible precision. It starts with a latency period, just anxious waiting. Then the onset hits, where your sensibility sharpens up. This leads to an escalation phase, this hilarious state where time becomes totally elastic. At the peak, you get these wild illusions of profound cosmic meaning. But then comes the inevitable decline, a melancholy return to reality ending in what he accurately called complete defeat. You're sober again, and time hasn't gone anywhere. He eventually came to a really tragic realization about this drug. He wrote, "Hashish will suit those who do nothing, not those who seek to accomplish something. Because while it vastly expands your imagination and fills your head with these massive cosmic visions, it completely paralyzes the human will. You could dream up an absolute masterpiece in your mind, but you completely lose the physical and mental discipline to actually write it down."
Section 4. Opium, the dark twin.
The descent into opium addiction is honestly a horrifying staircase. It begins innocently enough with discovery, using it for the medical relief of physical pain. Then it shifts into enjoyment, using it just for the pleasure of it. Soon enough, habituation sets in as your body builds a tolerance, which quickly turns into dependence, where you're using just to avoid the utter agony of withdrawal. And finally, it ends in complete biological and psychological enslavement, a total loss of identity. When we put these two powerful substances side by side, the contrast is stark. Hashish is the intoxicant of visions, of exaggeration and temporal expansion. It paralyzes your will, sure, but your consciousness is hyperactive. Opium, on the other hand, is the intoxicant of dreams, of erasure and ultimate peace. It utterly destroys both the will and time itself, locking you in this motionless, eternal present, where ambition just ceases to exist.
Baudelaire recognized this grim reality with brutal honesty. He observed that opium gives neither strength nor activity. It is a suicide in installments. By seeking an eternal present that's entirely free from the burdens of time and pain, the opium user basically stops participating in human existence altogether. It's a slow, creeping surrender.
Section 5. The Artist's Dilemma.
So, we arrive at a terrible, fascinating paradox. The exact substances that were physically and socially destroying Baudelaire the man were the very things providing the raw visionary material for his genius. Works like The Flowers of Evil are absolutely packed with dark insights gained from these altered states, yet he insisted that the actual crafting of the poetry required complete sobriety. So the drugs provided the subject matter, but they simultaneously destroyed the artist.
Looking at this table, the toll of these substances is pretty clear. Wine just softens time, but it constantly delays your work. Hashish profoundly distorts time, but it paralyzes your creative will. And opium destroys time altogether, completely erasing all human ambition. Every single one of these remedies ultimately fails the working artist. Ultimately, these artificial paradises fail. They promise heaven but leave behind a devastating trail. Profound physical degradation and premature aging, the loss of your working memory, complete social isolation, severe financial ruin, and ultimately an agonizing premature death with so much potential left completely unfulfilled. The debt these substances demand is always paid in full. Baudelaire realized this far too late. He wrote, "Man wanted to be God. From that moment on, he has been condemned to seek godhood in substances. These chemicals promise to elevate you to divinity, to let you transcend time itself. But in reality, they guarantee you can never reach it, forever trapping you in a static, decaying dependency." As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to step back from the 19th century for a second and reflect on your own life. We all still feel that horrible burden of time. So ask yourself, what temporary, modern antidotes are you using to escape the heavy anxiety of your own time? Are they actually helping, or are they just another trap? Something to really think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.